Have you ever asked yourself, why does NASA avoid talking about Europa, Jupiter's enigmatic moon? What's so secret, so prohibited, which needs to be hidden at any cost? Leaked documents, censored files, and strange images removed from the internet point to something that goes far beyond ordinary science. This video may contain some of the most disturbing information about the secret space program, NASA, and why they never wanted you to know the truth, while billions are invested in telescopes and missions, like the Europa Clipper, which is scheduled to study this moon. No one explains why. For decades, NASA remained completely silent about certain anomalies detected by previous probes. Why Europe? Why does this small, icy satellite orbiting the giant Jupiter attract so much mystery and data manipulation? The answer may lie in the frozen depths of an underground ocean, or perhaps it's in something that lives inside. There are indications that NASA found signs of alien life or even unnatural structures hidden beneath the ice crust. But, as usual, all that could confirm this information was labeled as sensitive material and withdrawn from circulation. There are independent researchers who claim to have proof that the truth is being deliberately buried. And if this is real, what else are they hiding from humanity? Imagine for a second, if there is life beyond Earth and NASA has known about it for years, why continue to keep humanity in the dark? We are about to explore one of the biggest space conspiracies ever documented, where each pixel of an image can contain a clue. Each suppressed document can hide a revelation. Are you prepared to see beyond the curtain of illusion? Welcome to Hidden Side of Space. But before we reveal what could really be happening in Europa, we need to analyze a sequence of facts that, when connected, reveal a dangerous pattern of manipulation and silence imposed by institutions like NASA. And that's exactly why this video needs to be watched until the end. The next information you will see is not available in traditional news and much less on official NASA channels. On the contrary, what is to come was hidden, censored, and silently deleted, as if it had never existed. But digital records, leaked documents, and testimonies from those who once worked within the space agency itself tell a completely different story, and much darker. You will discover why certain images of Europa mysteriously disappeared from NASA's databases, and what was found in radar records that were never publicly commented on. This revelation could change what we believe about life beyond Earth, the solar system, and the true objectives of space missions. So if you, like thousands of people, believes that the truth must be exposed, if you want to go beyond the edited versions and discover what is really being hidden from humanity, now is the time. Leave your like right now. This helps us game the algorithm and get this content to more people who also deserve to know what's going on behind the curtains of space exploration. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because in the next few minutes you will enter into a deep investigation that goes beyond what has been shown to the public. What's buried in Europa's ice could be the key to one of the universe's greatest secrets. And NASA has known this for a long time. Get ready. What comes next could be the missing piece to understand the dark puzzle of the world's most powerful space agency. And when we talk about the true face of space exploration, we cannot ignore a name that is increasingly present between the lines of these revelations: Europa Clipper. NASA's mission, scheduled for launch in 2024 and arriving in the Jupiter system in 2030, promises to be one of the most ambitious in history. The official goal: investigate closely Europe, this small and mysterious moon covered in ice, which, according to the agency's own scientists, could hide an underground ocean capable of harboring alien life. But here comes the first big question that doesn't want to be ignored. If the possibility of life has been considered for decades, why has NASA only now decided to invest billions in this specific mission? What was detected before and silenced? It is no coincidence that the Europa Clipper planning comes after decades of probes that supposedly found nothing. The Galileo, Voyager, and even Juno missions, which are still in operation, have collected valuable data from the Jupiter system, although several files from these missions simply disappeared or were classified as not available to the public. We're talking about images, radar readings, magnetic field records, and even heat spectra data that should be in the public domain but has disappeared as if it never existed. And now, with the promise that Clipper will make fly-by flights over Europe and collect more precise samples, there is a feeling in the air that NASA is trying to revisit something that has been seen before, but that needs to be reinterpreted, re-edited, and perhaps even covered up again. The sudden increase in investments by private companies in the space sector also raises suspicions. Companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and even Axiom Space aren't just interested in space tourism or colonies on Mars. They are increasingly involved in parallel projects with NASA itself, in agreements that are often not fully transparent to the public. This means that exclusive information, which previously belonged only to the United States government, is being shared with private corporations, and that in itself represents a danger. In the end, whoever controls access to spatial information controls the narrative about what is possible or not to exist outside Earth. Now, reflect with me. If you had access to data that proved the existence of a form of life outside our planet, even if microscopic, would you tell the world or keep this secret for fear of the global impact it would cause? Because that's exactly what's at stake. Some experts claim that Europa has the three essential elements for life, as we know it: liquid water, energy sources, and basic chemical components. And more than that, there are records, hidden, that indicate thermal movement beneath the ice sheet, which suggests that there is something active, a heat source, or ... who knows, a form of life. NASA's silence over the past few decades further fuels the theory that some discovery made between the 1980s and 2000 not only surprised scientists, but also forced them to change their entire approach towards Europe. Since then, each step taken seems carefully choreographed, hiding information, investing in new missions that reconfirm old data from a new perspective, and delivering to the public only pieces of the puzzle, always edited, always filtered. And when we talk about images, the mystery grows even more. There are visual records that show anomalous geometric patterns on the moon's frozen surface, straight lines that do not follow natural formations, symmetries that do not exist in common glaciers, and even structures that resemble portals, entrances, or columns, something that could easily be interpreted as artificial constructions hidden beneath the icy crust. NASA has never publicly commented on these images, and when questioned, it responds in a generic way, alleging distortions, noise, or digital artifacts. But is it really? It is 2025. The technology for capturing and analyzing space images is absurdly advanced. Not identifying what is in an image today is, at the very least, suspicious. The most impressive thing is that several files of these same images were simply deleted or renamed on the agency's servers as if someone was clearing the history. Coincidence or a deliberate data control operation? About that, Google Earth space algorithms, astronomical viewing platforms, and even NASA's own simulations have begun to hide specific regions of Europa. Yes, you can check this out for yourself. Some areas of the moon's surface appear with low resolution or with distortions that don't make sense. And it's not a technical failure. This is done intentionally. They are hiding something, and this is no longer theory. It is recurring. Practice, and why hide it? Because if the public starts to believe that there is, in fact, life on another world, even if primitive, that completely changes our position in the universe, our perception of religion, science, and even the role of great powers in space. Exploration, It is a change so profound that it shakes the global information control structure. And if there is something that governments and corporations fear, it is precisely losing control of the narrative. Therefore, this video is not just another content about space. He is a calling, a veiled accusation, an invitation to research. You are not here by chance. And the truth that we will continue to reveal needs to be spread. We need to form a conscious, critical, and attentive community. A legion of people who, like you, are tired of being deceived with half-truths and official versions. And if you've come this far, it's because you feel that there is something wrong with what they tell us. Have you ever noticed that the images don't match the explanations? The documents are hidden, the data disappears. And maybe you notice that no one responds when the right question is asked. Now, imagine if this video was seen by thousands of people with the same sense of doubt. The impact of this would be enormous. So help me break this silence. Comment below if you've heard about the Europa Clipper mission. And more than that, comment, they are hiding something. If you believe the truth is not being told, your comment is not just an answer. It's a collective scream. It's a sign that we are not alone in this search for answers. And it is exactly at this point that the mystery begins to take shape. What really exists beneath Europa's thick ice crust? Officially, NASA claims that this moon is home to a salty underground ocean with more water than all of Earth's oceans combined. It is one of the few moons in the solar system with internal geological activity, which means there is heat coming. From the core, enough heat to keep the water in a liquid state beneath the frozen surface. This alone would be enough to classify Europe as one of the most promising environments for extraterrestrial life. But what if this life has already been detected and simply hidden from the public by greater interests? Some independent researchers who have already worked with data from the Galileo mission claim that there are unusual electromagnetic readings detected near Europa's crust. These readings, according to them, are incompatible with natural formations. And even stranger, this information mysteriously disappeared from public reports in the following years. Coincidence, or an attempt to stifle a discovery that would change everything we know about life beyond Earth? Because the truth is that we are not just talking about a salty ocean. We are talking about possible symmetrical geometric structures with proportions and angles that cannot be explained by natural processes alone. There is a hypothesis that has been gaining strength, that Europe isn't just harboring primitive microbial life, but yes, more complex, perhaps even intelligent, life forms that use the internal ocean as a habitat. And as absurd as this may sound to those who blindly believe in the official versions, there are visual clues recorded by space telescopes that show patterns of movement beneath the surface, repetitive patterns, which resemble organized signals, as if something beneath the crust was trying to communicate, or, at the very least, in constant coordinated activity. These patterns, when overlaid on high-resolution images, reveal what many describe as straight lines, perfect curves, and extremely precise intersection points. Geometry like this doesn't happen by chance. What's more, some of these patterns appear and disappear at regular intervals. These are formations that spring from the ice and then disappear in a matter of days or weeks, as if they were portals, mobile structures, or natural mechanisms that we still cannot understand. NASA, when asked about these images, usually responds with generic terms: compression failure, processing artifact, or solar reflection. But these explanations do not hold up when faced with the repetition of the same patterns in different missions and angles. If it was a technical failure, why always at the same point, at the same coordinates? And why is there no official effort to investigate these visual defects? What many people don't know is that Europa has already been classified by some analysts as one of the celestial bodies with the greatest potential for intelligent life in the solar system, surpassing even Mars. And that changes everything. Because If there is intelligent life or traces of civilization there, then we are facing information that could collapse the way we view the universe, religion, human history, and NASA's role as a transparent public agency. The most curious thing is that, in specialized forums and communities of independent astronomers, images of supposed tubular structures emerging from ice cracks are already circulating. These structures appear to form underground networks, connected as if they were power channels, ducts, or even artificial corridors. And it doesn't stop there. During the Galileo mission, a heat anomaly was recorded coming from exactly one of these cracked regions, as if there was some type of intense activity there. And this activity was ignored in official reports. After that, mysteriously, the mission database was down for weeks. When he returned, most of the images had been removed or replaced with low-resolution versions. Who decides what is shown? 2. The public, who controls these edits. And why hide precisely the data that involves the most sensitive points of Europa's crust? There is also evidence that some radio signals were detected coming from this moon, but quickly classified as interference. Interference in full space vacuum and at a specific frequency. Signals that appear in an intermittent pattern and then cease are not interference. They are attempted emission, but no plausible explanation was given. On the contrary, it was ignored, silenced, erased. Another alarming fact comes from the behavior of the stars themselves around Jupiter. Several probes report unusual oscillations in Europa's magnetic field, as if something was altering the natural flow of radiation, which could indicate the presence of metallic structures under the ice, or some type of unknown propulsion or defense system. Have you thought about that? An artificial system hidden in the core of a frozen moon millions of kilometers from Earth. It seems like science fiction. Until we realize that, in recent years, several NASA scientists have resigned from their positions shortly after being involved in missions linked to Jupiter. Was this just a coincidence or a way to move away from something that was discovered and couldn't be shared with the public? The most serious thing is to realize that every time the discussion about life in Europe gains strength, NASA redirects the narrative to Mars as if it were a form of strategic distraction. Meanwhile, the mystery grows, the images disappear, and the documents are archived under secrecy. What do they know that we can't know? If you've been following this video so far, it's because you feel like this story isn't complete. And that's why I need you to leave a comment below right now. Right? The truth is under the ice if you believe that there is something in Europa that is being hidden from humanity. Your comment helps this video reach more people and strengthens us as a community. If you want to reinforce this message even further, comment too. I see what they don't show. Let's break this silence together. According to an anonymous NASA informant who had direct access to internal records during the Galileo mission, some images and data collected on Europa were deliberately taken from public reports before they were released. This former employee reported, in encrypted forums and leaks via whistleblowers, that there was an internal group with restricted access, responsible for filtering everything that could compromise the official narrative. And according to him, what was captured near the region known as Connemara Chaos was not just broken ice, but rather structures with symmetry and atypical thermal behavior, which suggested an artificial presence. This type of leak, despite always being treated as a conspiracy theory by the traditional media, is reinforced by several requests registered with the FOIA, the U.S. Access to Information Act. And the most curious thing, most of these requests were denied with vague justifications, such as risk to national security or higher classification. Now think with me. Why could a geological formation on a frozen moon, billions of kilometers from Earth, pose a risk to national security? The only logical explanation is that we are dealing with discoveries that transcend simple geology. We are talking about data that could compromise public trust in space agencies, governments, and even the foundations of science as we know it. Furthermore, when we compare old images of Europa, obtained by the Voyager and Galileo probes, with some more recent ones made available in NASA simulations and databases, it is possible to see stark differences. In many of the older images, certain details appear much more clearly: linear fissures that resemble rails, shadows that project like towers or columns, circular formations that resemble domes. In current versions, with supposedly more advanced technology, these same regions appear blurred, distorted, or with lower resolution, as if they had been purposely re-edited to hide details. There is also the classic case of the so-called Europa 94 document, an internal file that was reportedly leaked on deep web forums and which describes a meeting between NASA analysts and military scientists to discuss what they called unidentified intelligent activity beneath the ice crust. This document, although never officially authenticated, as always happens in these cases, bears the confidentiality stamp of a sector known as SFOC, Secret Files of Outer Colonies, a supposed parallel division of NASA that would deal with sensitive data from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Of course, all of this was publicly denied, but the leak happened, and the screenshots are still circulating among communities of independent researchers. And things become even stranger when we look at the testimonies of former analysts and engineers who worked on space missions. One of them, who used the codename RavenX, stated in 2018 that he had been part of an image analysis team that received specific instructions to delete or blur any data that showed unnatural patterns on Europa's surface. According to him, some of the raw images were not even archived in conventional systems. They went directly to offline servers and were only accessed by a very limited number of people with authorization level Majestic 12, a code that has already appeared in other leaks linked to U.S. ufological secrets. Now, stop and think. Why hide images? Why put filters and labels as non-disclosable? What could a simple moon of Jupiter contain that justifies such data control? The answer may be linked to the hypothesis that Europa would be a kind of natural probe or a base hidden beneath the surface, not built by humans, but perhaps inherited from a previous civilization, or even an activity by as yet unidentified life forms. And this leads us to one of the darkest theories of all, that NASA itself has already attempted indirect contact with this active environment, but without success. Or worse, with unexpected responses that had to be suppressed. It is not today that we are talking about electromagnetic anomalies around Europa. Reports from previous missions recorded interference with the probe's communication systems, especially when they flew over specific regions. These failures were punctual and disappeared as soon as the probe moved away from the coordinates in question. Coincidence? Difficultly? Even more so when multiple missions with different technologies reported identical problems in the same geographic points. And of course, these reports were later simplified or attributed to generic technical glitches. Another detail that few have noticed is the sudden increase in research on non-human artificial intelligence in scientific publications financed by funds linked to NASA. Many believe that this is not just philosophical or futuristic studies, but rather attempts to understand or decipher patterns that were captured and that do not fit with any terrestrial biological model. In other words, there may be records of intelligent behaviors in Europe that are not attributable to nature, as we know it, and this would explain why so much effort is being made to hide raw data, reprocess images, and avoid deeper public discussions about this moon. To the general public, this all sounds like an exaggeration, a crazy theory. But patterns repeat themselves. First, the information appears. Then, she disappears. Then, it is denied. And finally, a new official mission appears to revisit the same place, always with the promise of now bringing concrete answers. But the questions follow, the anomalies continue, and NASA remains silent, using technical terms and vague reports to avoid having to face the main question: what exactly was found on Europa? If you're watching this video and you also feel like these gaps don't make sense, that there's something much bigger being hidden from our view, I want you to help me keep this investigation alive. Comment below, they know what's down there, if you believe that. NASA already has knowledge of what is hidden under Europa's ice. Or, if you prefer, write. Don't erase the truth to make it clear that you are attentive, present, and want this information to continue being discussed. This is more than a comment. It's an act of resistance. From the moment we start to cross-reference the leaked data with the images that are still available, at least those that escaped NASA's filtering, something very intriguing begins to emerge before our eyes. In some older captures of Europa's surface made by the Voyager and Galileo missions, it is possible to notice unusual geometric patterns. It's completely different from what would be expected from natural formations generated by the movement of ice or the tectonic activity of the Moon. We are not talking about random cracks here, but rather straight lines, 90-degree angles, almost hexagonal figures, and, in certain cases, perfect symmetries that defy any simple geological explanation. These formations appear, curiously, always, in places where thermal data indicated concentrated heat anomalies, as if something was emanating energy from beneath the frozen crust. In some frames, it is even possible to see a kind of translucent dome, surrounded by shadows that resemble towers or vertical columns, almost as if they were part of a structure. Many skeptical experts attribute this to visual artifacts, light distortions, image compression failures. But the pattern repeats itself in different missions, in different orbital positions, always in the same geographic locations. Now think about it with me. If it was a glitch, it should be random, right? But that's not what the data shows. These patterns appear in shots taken with different technologies, at different times and under different lighting conditions. And yet, they persist. This systematic repetition raises a question that cannot be ignored. Are we really dealing with natural formations? Or is there something being deliberately ignored? Or worse, covered up? Some ufologists, independent researchers, and even alternative scientists have already suggested that these formations could indicate the existence of an underground base hidden under the ice of Europa. According to these theories, it would be an active installation, perhaps operated by a non-human intelligence, or even a structure left by an ancient civilization that inhabited or used the Moon as an outpost. It may seem absurd at first, but it is exactly this type of reasoning that was considered impossible in other times, and was later proven to be real. After all, how many times in history has science discredited hypotheses that later turned out to be true? And there is more. In images analyzed by researchers on independent platforms, it was observed inexplicable beams of light piercing the crust, appearing in places without any technical justification for their presence. These beams do not behave like solar reflections. They have a point origin and appear to emerge from within the ice as if they were energy emissions, or perhaps signals. In one of these images, a specific point appears to emit a pulsating glow with a constant rhythm, which raised suspicions that it could be some type of controlled emission. Of course, none of this data is officially recognized. But if everything is just an illusion, why the effort to hide, silence, downgrade, and remove these files from public repositories? It is also worth remembering the case of an image leaked in the late 2000s, supposedly taken from one of NASA's own banks, which showed what appeared to be a hexagon-shaped structure with a central hangar-like opening, surrounded by a circular formation. That image disappeared from the internet in a matter of days, and those who reposted it had their accounts blocked, their videos removed for guideline violations, and their blogs indexed from search engines. Coincidence? Or clear sign that they touched a point too sensitive to be exposed. The big question is, what exactly is being hidden in Europa? The images are there, even if filtered, even if manipulated. The patterns are still visible, even at low resolution. The hotspots, the beams of light, the formations that defy nature. Everything indicates that we are not just dealing with a frozen moon. We are facing something that could rewrite the way humanity sees the cosmos, the past, and even our origins. And yet, we are asked to ignore it. We are told to trust the official versions while silently sweeping under the rug any evidence that points to what might actually be there under the ice, pulsing, waiting to be discovered, or perhaps already watching us, if you are. Here, if you are feeling that these images say more than NASA's communications allow, then you are already among those who see beyond the surface. I want you to comment now below. I saw the signs. If you also noticed something strange in these images, something that doesn't fit with the explanation they give us. Or comment, there is something under the ice. If you believe there is a base, a structure, or any active presence in Europe. Your interaction here isn't just a comment, it's part of our collective investigation. And she's just getting started. NASA's official version of Europa is, to say the least, intriguing. According to the agency's own public statements, Europa is considered one of the most promising places in the solar system for the existence of life, thanks to the combination of three main factors: the presence of an underground ocean with liquid water, an internal source of heat generated by gravitational tidal forces caused by Jupiter, and the possibility of chemical elements essential for biological processes. So far, it all seems very scientific, technical, and carefully planned to feed curiosity without offering any concrete answers. They say Europe can harbor life, but they never say, "We found life in Europe," and that already says a lot. When faced with more direct questions, such as those involving supposed geometric structures, thermal anomalies, and images edited or missing from the archives, NASA's response is always evasive. Terms such as visual artifacts, processing, interference, data compression, and public misinterpretation are used as shields, creating a kind of barrier of technicalities that prevents any investigation from going beyond the superficial. But the question that doesn't want to be silenced remains alive and pulsating. If there is absolutely nothing there, why are so many images censored? Why does so much data disappear? And why does NASA act so cautiously whenever the name Europa comes back into the spotlight? The agency's behavior over the past few decades regarding this specific moon is contradictory, to say the least. On the one hand, they finance one of the most expensive and ambitious missions in history, the Europa Clipper, with the clear objective of investigating deeper conditions in the subsurface ocean. On the other hand, they maintain a neutral discourse, repeating over and over that there is no conclusive evidence, and that everything is based on scientific hypotheses still under development. But if there is no clear evidence, why so much investment? Why so much secrecy? And why so many restrictions on access to raw data? There is also the deafening silence when journalists or researchers try to pressure the agency about images that have been taken down. Several independent astronomy portals report that old links that previously redirected to high-resolution files now return errors or lead to pages with low-quality versions. When questioned, NASA simply responds that the page has been updated without explaining the reason for removing or re-editing the original images. And the most curious thing is that this occurs precisely in the most discussed images, most analyzed by ufologists, researchers, and conspiracy theorists. There is also the case of a press conference held years ago, in which a journalist directly asked a NASA spokesperson about the possibility of artificial constructions on Europa. The response was immediate, cold, and completely evasive. We have no evidence of artificial activity on Europa. and any allegation to that effect lacks scientific basis, a response that should have closed the matter, but which, in practice, only raised even more suspicions. Because denying the existence of something without even considering further investigation is, to say the least, irresponsible. Or it's on purpose. And that's where the subtle game of disinformation comes in. Rather than simply admitting that unexplained data exists, NASA prefers to use its position of scientific authority to impose a single, standardized, and untouchable narrative. Those who dare to question or investigate on their own are labeled conspiracists, pseudoscientists, or alien hunters. But the truth is that many of these questioners are physicists, engineers, independent astronomers, and even former employees of the agency itself. And they all report the same pattern: selective hiding, discrete edits, canned responses, and no real transparency. Perhaps the most shocking point is the fact that many images of Europa, captured by probes in very high resolution, were never released to the public. Only optimized or illustrative versions are presented in official communications, always accompanied by technical descriptions that confuse more than they explain. The complete files are stored on servers that can only be accessed by scientists accredited in specific projects, and even then with prior authorization. Is this science or is it control? And we're not talking about lost or corrupted files. We are talking about digital content, recorded, processed, stored, but under lock and key under the excuse that there is nothing much there. So why so much secrecy? Why, among all the moons and planets in the solar system, does Europa seem to be the place where information is most sensitive, most limited, and most treated with caution? Maybe because there's something there that shouldn't be discovered. At least not yet. If you also notice these inconsistencies, if you feel that there is more behind NASA's institutional facade than they let on, I want you to actively participate in this debate. Comment below. The truth is in the absence if you believe that NASA's silence says more than any official statement. Or write, nothing is hidden by chance, to make it clear that you are also paying attention to signs, patterns, and omissions. Together, we are stronger in this search for answers. And now we've reached a point where the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together in a disturbingly clear way. Information that circulated discreetly among private forums, intercepted by alternative research groups, and shared by anonymous profiles involves what would be a NASA confidential internal report, obtained by a former employee who reportedly participated in a strategic meeting involving scientists from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory and members of the U.S. Department of Defense. In this document, whose title was written as Europa Transmission Pattern Log Class Delta, there are records of electromagnetic pulses received from underground coordinates of the moon Europa, with a repetitive, unnatural pattern, and not yet identified by any known geophysical origin model. According to reports leaked by this source, these pulses would have been received by equipment on the Galileo probe itself, but never released to the public. The data was stored on offline servers, outside the deep space network environment, and classified with a level of secrecy equivalent to that of nuclear defense protocols. Now reflect, what could be so impactful as to be treated as a global security threat? Could these signals be an echo of natural processes? Or would they be registering an attempt at direct communication from an active consciousness beneath Europa's crust? What if this revelation is just the tip of the iceberg? Literally, an even bolder theory, but one that has gained strength among alternative researchers, suggests that Europe may have been, in the remote past, home to a non-human civilization, perhaps predating humanity, which used groundwater as shelter, technology, or refuge. Some of these scholars claim that the geometric structures visible in the images are remains of a submerged alien architecture, preserved by ice over millennia, and that the heat patterns detected more recently are evidence of reactivation, as if something down there is coming back to life. But what if this civilization had never gone extinct? What if it is still active, silent, out of our sight, waiting, or simply watching? This type of hypothesis may seem absurd to those who still believe that intelligent life is restricted to Earth. However, we look at the omitted data, the censored patterns, and the silenced testimonies. The possibility becomes not only plausible, but frighteningly logical. If it's true, if there is intelligent life on Europa, if there is active consciousness beneath the ice, what does that say about our position in the universe? What does this change about who we are, where we came from, and where we are going? And most importantly, why is this information being hidden from us? What is the real reason NASA avoids direct confirmation? Is it fear of global panic? Desire for control over the narrative? Or is there an even more complex agenda afoot? One that involves governments, corporations, and interests that go far beyond science. If you also feel that there is something bigger being hidden, something that defies conventional understanding, comment now below. They are waking up. If you believe that there is an active consciousness beneath Europa, silently observing, or write the past is calling us, if you feel there is a connection between what happened there and who we really are, your comment is more than a reaction. It's part of this collective, investigative journey now that you've walked with me, this journey full of hidden layers, silenced data, and visual clues that escape NASA's narrative control. It's impossible to leave this video the same way you entered it. You have seen the records, the leaks, the testimonies that few dare to comment on in public. Have you noticed how information is carefully shaped? How images are edited? How truths are filtered under the pretense of security or lack of conclusive evidence? But how long will we accept such fragile explanations in the face of such powerful data? NASA continues to claim that there is no confirmation of life in Europe. But if you paid attention, you'll see that they never say they didn't find anything, just that they can't say for sure. And in this vacuum of words hides an ancient policy which mixes science with control, curiosity with censorship. After all, there was public confirmation that there is an active intelligence beneath the icy crust of one of Jupiter's moons. What would that do? How would governments react? How would religions interpret it? How would societies deal with the fact that we are not alone, and perhaps we never have been? And this is where your role becomes crucial. I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to show you what is being left aside, what has been erased, censored, distorted. I'm here to make you think, question, connect the dots. But the next part of this investigation isn't just up to me, it's up to you. Now it's up to you. Is NASA hiding something on Europa? Or is this all just a theoretical construction based on too many coincidences? If you believe that the truth is being kept secret behind technical terms and edited images, comment below. The truth is under the ice. If you think we still need to dig deeper, right? This is just the beginning. And if you have a different theory, share it in the comments. Here, your voice is part of this collective investigation. If this video impacted you in any way, if at any point you felt that there is something much bigger being hidden from us, then you are already part of a community that does not accept ready-made truths. Here we investigate, question, connect the dots, and goes after what is being hidden by space authorities, especially NASA. So if you've made it this far, that means you're not like most, and I want to invite you to be part of this journey in a more active way. Subscribe to the channel now and ring the bell, because in the next videos we will continue to reveal what is being buried under secrecy on Europa, on Mars, on the Moon, and beyond. And to let me know that you watched until the end, comment below. I see what they hide, so I know. I can count on you in the next chapters of this investigation. We're together. And remember, Whoever seeks the truth cannot stop at the shallow end.